Hey everyone, this is Patrick, and it's time for another edition of Heavy Therapy. I am in my review corner, so it is time to bring you a review. The album in question is Úlfúð with Of Existential Distortion. Úlfúð is a 5-piece outfit from Iceland. This is their debut album. It was put out on Dark Descent Records, and it is 8 tracks, 44 minutes, and 34 seconds of music. So the structure of this review will be mostly me trying to describe the sounds that I'm hearing using other albums that I have. But first, the general genre would be black metal / death metal. It is mostly a black metal album to me, but the part that makes calling it death metal as well the most accurate would be the vocals. The vocals are lower, not quite super low guttural, but a mid to almost low ranged type growl. Every now and then you hear a higher pitched, more black metal type vocals. So let me first move on from the general sound and give you 2 big points. So I think the vocal approach makes me think of Wake, and the vocalist from Wake, and especially how he sounds here on Devouring Ruin. So you have a vocalist who has emotional, painful, powerful vocals that make me think of Wake. The guitar tone is similar to something that Desolate Shrine uses on their album last year, Fires of the Dying World, another Dark Descent release. So, guitar tone, think Desolate Shrine. Vocals, think Wake. In terms of song structure and sort of the way that they play their riffs, the riffing style, I think of Behemoth, especially Nurgle on Evangelion. Again, this was a death metal album, and this is more of a Úlfúð is more of a black metal album, but the guitar riffing style makes me think of Evangelion by Behemoth. Track 1, When Strange Lights Dance, is an extremely catchy black metal song. It starts with it starts with what sounds like feedback, reverb, and then kind of the noisiest, most chaotic part of the entire album is the first minute or so of Where Strange Lights Dance. It settles into a beautiful tremolo riff that is is more intricate and more interesting than it even sounds, holistically. When you break down that tremolo riff note by note, that is a really awesome tremolo riff. Memorable. I don't think I'll ever forget it. As far as that song, it makes me, the black metal style of Úlfúð, make me think of Malist. For those who know Malist, one-person black metal project from Russia. Where Strange Lights Dance turns into track 2, which is called Tears of Terra. And this actually makes me think of sludge. So you have a blackened black metal band that makes me think of sludge here on track 2. There's a lot of riffs in this song, not a lot as in 30 or 40. It's not a crazy, technical tech death kind of a lot, but 4 or 5 riffs that build off each other, chunky, heavy, warm. So yes, they're from Iceland. The album cover looks cold. This album mostly has warm guitar tones. You hear a lot of the mid-range, crunchy. So track 2, Tears of Terra, actually made me think of Dune and their album from 2021, Edmund Enka. So guitar riffing style, combination of Behemoth on Evangelion and Edmund Enka by Dune, played by a black metal band. Track 3, Mockery Theater, is quite relentless, relatively speaking. It's one of the heaviest tracks on here. Track 4, Faceless, is a slower, moodier track. That brings us to side B. Side B starts with God's Left Behind. And God's Left Behind has another memorable, crunchy riff that makes me think of Dune. The weakest song on the album is probably Questions, track 6, though it's still a good track. So I actually recommend checking out Questions, because if you listen to Questions and go, that song's not weak at all, that's my point. Slower song as well, but good song, weaker song in a collection of 8 really strong songs. The final 2 tracks here are probably my favorite 2 tracks on the album after track 1, or I should say alongside track 1. Track 7 is An Elegy to a Paradise Out of Reach, and track 8 is Leviathan Dreams. An Elegy to a Paradise Out of Reach is the longest song. It's, I think, 8.5 minutes, and this album is really good at building up throughout the album, building up more intensity, more groove, and this track has more dissonance than is found on other parts of this album. And then track 8 is another just sort of melodic. I haven't said melody very often yet, so throughout this album I actually hear a lot of melody. What I call this melodic black metal. It's on the edge, not quite melodic black metal, but lots of melody that actually makes me think of probably 1999 era In Flames. The vocals on this album, let me find the name of the vocalist here. So it comes with a awesome booklet. Vocals and lyrics are by Brecky Danielson Imsland. Vocals here are amazing, powerful, emotional, and they're a certain style that if you don't pay attention, they can kind of sound, quite familiar and typical. But then if you start paying attention, you're just really happy that this is in fact the vocal performance that you're getting. Powerful, like I said. A lot of variety, again, when you pay attention to it. There is backing vocals on this album played by the bassist Hanar Sindri Grederson. I haven't mentioned the drums too much. The drums is played by Sigurdur Jacobsen. The drums quite powerful. Knows when to drive home snare hits. Cool cymbal play. Drums don't always cut through the mix, but that's because the guitar tone is so heavy and dense, full of mids. The vocals are pretty high in the mix, but you see why, because this vocalist is powerful. Like I said, it reminds me of the gentleman from Wake. Powerful vocalist. So yeah, before I wrap this up, let me just sort of make sure I mention everything I wanted to mention. So the riffs matter a whole lot on this album. they just are memorable, catchy, and yeah, they matter a lot. I already said this, but this is a warm sounding album for the most part. It These are great songs, and sort of as the album builds, I like that they don't let the last few seconds, the last 10% or so of a track just fade out. Sometimes there's a fade out, quite literally, right? But what I mean is, you know how some songs that are 5.5 minutes or so, they start to end up kind of using reverb, using feedback, and letting the final 45 seconds sort of repeat a riff that you've already heard. But this band will introduce new riffs, new sections in that last 10 to 15% of the song quite a few times on this album, and it's always a good riff, always a good choice, great song writing. It's kind of a gateway album to probably fans of heavier music, but they don't quite get into death metal that much. They don't quite like black metal, mostly because of the guitar tones being kind of usually cold and can't think of the word I'm looking for, but sort of more higher ranged in terms of the guitar tone not being very dense, the vocals being too shrieky. I recommended this album to a friend who actually likes a lot of modern sort of metalcore, and he thought this album was really good. So, yeah. Other touchstones that I haven't mentioned yet. Amon Amarth in some of its more chunkier grooves. Enslaved Heimdall. There's a brief use of clean vocals on one of these tracks that made me think of Enslaved. Lyrics, I haven't mentioned the lyrics. So the lyrics are in English, even though the band is from Iceland. I really like the lyrics. You can tell they're about political corruption, they're about economics, they're about the environment, especially on Tears of Terra. They're about sort of track 7, an elegy to a paradise out of reach. Kind of sounds like somebody who's given up. They haven't reached all of their goals and they're struggling with it. Yeah, so I really like the lyrics. I was happy to hear that they were in English. It wouldn't have taken away from my experience all that much, but I am happy that they are in English. Strongest tracks, like I said already, Where Strange Lights Dance, track 1, amazing. Very cool album art, by the way, or I should say, in my opinion. The album art is by Barul Marta. So I was talking about my favorite tracks: Where Strange Lights Dance, track 1, track 2, Tears of Terra, track 7, An Elegy of Paradise Out of Reach. Those are my 3 favorite tracks. 8 tracks, 44 minutes, 35 seconds of music. Another band that Úlfúð sound like is Ueda. So yeah, that Eisenwald record sound is going to be another touchstone for you, for those who are familiar. So overall, this is somewhere between an 8.5 and a 9 for me. Yeah, so really solid debut album. This is Úlfúð with Of Existential, Distortion, recently out on Dark Descent Records. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the comment section. Stay heavy.